The former German emperor's bodyguard ends up falling in love with one of his housekeepers, unaware that her dark secret could threaten more than their lives. Captain Stefan Brandt is summoned to Berlin, where he learns that their former leader, Kaiser Wilhelm II, requires a new commander for his military guard. Despite being ousted for his failure in leadership, the country still deems him an icon, so Stefan is assigned to protect him. Stefan argues that he's not fit for active service, but the general reminds him that after his negligence in Poland, he's lucky to be given this task instead of getting a court-martial. With no choice, the captain immediately heads to Holland, where Kaiser Wilhelm II is exiled. Upon his arrival, a maid named Mika opens the door for their new commander before the Kaiser's military assistant, Colonel Sigurd, welcomes him to the household. Meanwhile, the Kaiser's wife, Hermina, warns her husband that his army is here. Wilhelm refuses to acknowledge his military protection, but his wife asserts that the country giving them one is significant. Therefore, they must make the right impression. She believes that the regime wants Wilhelm back, so they have to invite the new commanding officer to dinner. As he begins his duty, Stefan soon reports to Inspector Dietrich, who assigns him to make detailed reports about Wilhelm's attitude towards the regime. This makes the captain realize that he's supposed to spy on the former Kaiser as well. The inspector also reveals that they intercepted transmissions nearby, leading them to believe that the British Secret Service will either kidnap or assassinate the former Kaiser. That afternoon, Mika accidentally interrupts a war briefing between Sigurd and Wilhelm to bring them coffee. Noticing that she's new, Wilhelm asks if she would have invaded Holland if she controlled the army. She quickly says yes since the place is nice, and this makes the Kaiser laugh. That evening, Mika visits Stefan's room to deliver the Kaiser's dinner invitation for tomorrow night. Instead of responding, Stefan is immediately drawn to her beauty and commands her to disrobe. Without question, Mika does as she's told, and the two proceed to make love. However, Stefan stops when his injury starts to hurt, so he sends the woman away. The following evening, the dinner proceeds with Wilhelm rambling on stories during his reign. Hermina switches the topic to their guest, so Stefan shares that his father and grandfather also served in the army. His mother cleaned houses to make a living, but she died of an illness when he was young. Hearing this angers Wilhelm since this was during his reign. He wonders if he's supposed to be blamed for this as well, arguing that he gave his life to their country, yet his own navy betrayed him. He insists that this betrayal was the reason why he lost the war. This quiets everyone down until the former Kaiser leaves. The captain returns to his room afterward, but to his surprise, Mika is there. This time, she orders him to disrobe, and Stefan does so, allowing her to see the scar on his side before they make love. After the deed, Mika hurries to leave, but Stefan asks her to stay. To his dismay, she ignores this and leaves. The following morning, Sigurd reports to the Kaiser that Stefan has requested to move into his house due to the threat of his life. The colonel also offers to brief him on the war's progress, but the Kaiser chooses to feed the ducks by the pond outside instead. This disappoints his wife, though she assures the colonel that there's still hope that her husband will regain his authority. Sigurd, however, believes that the idea is what stresses Wilhelm. Mika soon delivers more bread for the ducks, so the Kaiser invites her to join him in feeding the animals. As she does, he comments that she has beautiful hands, as if she is not used to physical labor. Mika just explains that war changed her life. Wilhelm then rambles about how he prefers to be with ducks since they don't blame him for their troubles. Mika sympathizes with him, understanding how he misses his power yet is full of regret about it. Just then, Stefan arrives, so Wilhelm teasingly mentions how the captain believes that there's a British spy in his household, unaware that this catches Mika's attention. The Kaiser then instructs the maid to show the captain his new room in their house. With this, the woman leads the man to his room, and he uses the private time to get to know her. However, she warns him that spending nights with a man is forbidden to the staff. Still, when Stefan asks where her room is, Mika tells him before leaving. Later, Dietrich visits the captain to report that they've narrowed down the transmission to the nearby village. During this, Mika rushes to the village to meet Pastor Hendricks. She warns that the army knows that there's a spy in the household, but he assures her that they don't know much yet since they haven't arrested her. She insists she needs time to do her task, so the pastor reminds her to do it when it's safe. Early the next day, Mika cleans her pistol before putting it away to head to work. That evening, she serves the men their drinks as the Kaiser discusses the war with Stefan and Sigurd. However, Wilhelm gets drunk and starts ranting about how he didn't want to start this battle. He insisted on sending a telegram to halt the invasion, but his generals never sent it since they wanted the war. Seeing him wallowing, the colonel tries to distract the Kaiser by offering to show Stefan his military uniforms. This allows the two to move away from the aging man. though Stefan comments that Wilhelm was still the Kaiser at the time, so he could have sent another telegram to prevent the previous war. Later that night, Hendrik sends a transmission to his allies, unaware that Dietrich's men are intercepting his message. During this, Wilhelm wakes up in his office to find Mika cleaning up. She uses this chance to tell the man something, only to be interrupted when his wife arrives. To the maid's surprise, she later finds Stefan reading her book on her bed. He apologizes for how he treated her the first night they met, and she assures him that she agreed to be with him that evening since she wanted him to. After their passionate evening, Mika asks about his scar, so Stefan explains that he got it from his last mission. With this in mind, the woman asks if he always follows orders, and he says yes. She then reveals that she is Jewish, as if testing his loyalty. This makes Stefan freeze, but ultimately, he dismisses this as he's fallen for her. Mika reminds him that he might have to care about her past one day, but he insists on enjoying their stolen moments while it lasts. As he sleeps that night, however, he dreams about a pile of bodies. This wakes him early in the morning, so Mika figures out that he's having nightmares. Stefan ignores this and just advises her not to tell anyone else about her past before leaving. The captain heads out to smoke outside, though he smells gun oil on the cigarette pack he retrieved from Mika's nightstand. Ignoring this, he goes to meet Dietrich as he arrives. The inspector informs him that they've confirmed that whoever's transmitting messages to the British is at the village, so they plan to search that evening. He also tells him to inform the Kaiser that Reichsfuhrer Himmler will join them for dinner tomorrow. Given the man's high authority, Dietrich demands to search the house before Himmler's arrival. Because of this, Stefan delivers the message to Wilhelm during the man's breakfast, only for Hermina to announce Himmler's visit before him. The woman also speaks to the captain privately, stressing how Himmler's visit could pave the way for her husband to be reinstated in power. She quickly assures him that they're still loyal to the Führer, but given Germany's tragic condition, the people need a king to look up to. Hermina claims that this is why she pulled what influence she had to arrange for the meeting, revealing that she was the one who invited Himmler. With all these in mind, the woman asks Stefan to ensure that the Reichsfuhrer will know nothing but positive things about Wilhelm and his household. The inspector's house search soon commences, which worries Mika. However, Stefan ensures that he's the one who inspects her room to save her from being discovered, already suspicious that she's the spy. While this is happening, Mika assists Wilhelm in feeding the ducks again. Frustrated at how his own home is being searched, he distracts himself by wondering about the maid's romances. After much thought, Mika admits that she's seeing someone, though she hardly knows the man. This gets the older man to talk about his first love, who ended up marrying someone else. He advises her to seize any chance she has since she might lose her love like he did. After the inspection, Mika hurries to her room and is relieved that her hidden pistol wasn't discovered. She then rushes away from the manor, which Stefan notices. The woman arrives at the church that evening, reporting to Hendricks about Himmler's visit tomorrow. She offers to kill him, but the pastor reminds her that it isn't her mission. Still, Mika insists, noting that the German regime killed her father and her husband, so she's willing to die for her vengeance. Hendricks asserts that they're not there for revenge. However, he sees that she won't back down, so the pastor promises to ask their allies if they should proceed with the assassination. Unbeknownst to them, Stefan is eavesdropping on their conversation. Late that night, the pastor transmits her message to London, but this allows Dietrich's men to zero in on his location and capture him. Unaware of this, Mika sneaks into the captain's room, seeking comfort as she dreads what will happen tomorrow. This leads them to spend the night together, though Stefan wakes again early in the morning after a nightmare. He shares that he dreamed about the village in Poland where the army gunned down innocent people. In grief, Stefan beat the officer who gunned them down, which led to him being dismissed from service. He defends that men like that officer put their army to shame, but Mika argues that their regime is full of men like that officer. Stefan refuses to believe this, so the disappointed woman prepares to leave. To her surprise, the man suddenly proposes to marry her. She reminds him that she is Jewish, so Stefan promises to protect her. This conversation is then halted when someone arrives. The Kaiser is later called as his wife has discovered Stefan and Mika's relationship. Hermina demands to fire them, but her husband insists on speaking to them privately first. Once alone, Wilhelm asks Mika if the captain is the man she spoke about yesterday. She says yes, much to the Kaiser's delight. He shares that he fathered children with other women, so he believes that he'd be a hypocrite if he punishes them for their relationship. Instead, he orders them to resume their duties but be more discreet about their relationship. Despite this good news, however, Stefan is immediately called to meet Dietrich. He discovers that they've caught the pastor and is in the process of tormenting the man for information. The inspector assures the captain that they'll uncover who the spy is within the day, making Stefan nervous. Meanwhile, Hermina speaks to Sigurd privately, pointing out that he's been dismissive of how important Himmler's visit is. The colonel reminds her of her husband's temper, so if the Reichsfuhrer provokes him, Wilhelm might say something that could cost them everything, including their lives. Hermina doubts this, but Sigurd reveals that a former chancellor and his wife were recently gunned down for showing a lack of support to the regime. This proves that not even those who once held authority are safe from the Führer. Shocked, the wife simply commands the colonel to prevent her husband from being provoked. Soon, Stefan returns to the manor, but before he can warn Mika about the pastor's capture, Reichsfuhrer Himmler arrives. After some pleasantries, the Reichsfuhrer is taken to his room. Stefan uses the chance to warn Mika that Hendrix was arrested and is being interrogated. Feigning ignorance, the maid asks why he's telling this to her, but the captain responds by asking why she slept with him in the first place. He accuses her of using him, which Mika denies. He recounts how he followed her to the church and smelled the gun oil from her room, hence why he knows that she's the spy. Defeated, the woman tells him to do his duty and arrest her, but the captain can't bring himself to do so. He orders her to leave instead, but the woman stresses that she has to do her duty. During this, Hermina goes up to the Reichsfuhrer's room and nervously bribes the man, hoping that it'll convince him to support her husband's return to the throne. Soon enough, Himmler goes on a walk with the Kaiser late that afternoon. Hours later, Hermina finds her husband looking shocked. He's been invited back to Berlin, and Hermina considers this as Wilhelm being reinstated as their king. His wife is excited for their future, but the man advises her to keep things a secret in the meantime. Meanwhile, Stefan finds Dietrich in his old cabin as the man is still waiting for word about the pastor's confession. Suddenly, Himmler arrives and informs the two that he has told the Kaiser that the Führer is reinstating him to his throne. However, this is merely a deception to flush out those still loyal to the monarchy. With this, the Reichsfuhrer orders them to intercept all communications in and out of the Kaiser's house and then report them to him. The dinner soon commences, and the officers discuss their troubles with the Jewish people. Some of them blame Wilhelm for not attending to it sooner, but the Kaiser argues that they had more pressing matters. Himmler assures them that their army has been working on a creative solution to this problem. Since Germany needs more room for its people, they're considering reordering other populations without impractical relocations. He notes that the elderly and the ill are merely wasting their resources, and children should prove their worth before being provided for. With this in mind, he shares that he attended an experiment where the disabled were eliminated quickly. This horrifies the rest, though they attempt to hide it. Soon, the Reichsfuhrer and his team prepare to leave. As they do, Mika quietly approaches Stefan. Having seen his frightened reaction to Himmler's plans, she tells him that those men are the rule and he is the exception. With this in mind, the captain asks Dietrich to update him once the pastor divulges information. He then sends him and the rest of Himmler's army away. All the while, Wilhelm and Hermina watch the cars leave, torn between finally achieving what they wanted and seeing the cruelty of the new government they're about to return to. With a heavy heart, the Kaiser heads to the woods to think while his wife retreats to her room. When they're gone, Stefan approaches Sigurd and asks if an officer can have loyalty greater than to his country. The colonel responds that the officer should first ask if the country he's loyal to still exists. Given this, the captain finally decides and warns Sigurd that the Kaiser's return to Berlin is a trap to lure out his supporters. This shocks the colonel, but he thanks the captain nonetheless. Stefan then rushes to Mika's room, only to find her gone. The woman is in the woods instead to deliver a message to the Kaiser from the British Prime Minister. Realizing that Mika is the secret agent in his household, Wilhelm smiles. Soon, Stefan hears the maid calling for help, claiming that Wilhelm has collapsed in the woods. This leads Sigurd and Hermina to check on the Kaiser while Mika rushes inside with the captain. Just then, Stefan receives a call and learns that the pastor has given Dietrich Mika's name. Learning this, the woman tries to run. Stefan stops her, so she pulls a gun on him, much to his surprise. However, he reminds her that Dietrich's men are already coming, so she won't be able to escape alone. He begs her to trust him, and with no choice, the woman drops her weapon. With that, the captain calls his men to seal the area before running off with Mika. Meanwhile, Hermina finds her weakened husband in the woods. He tells her that he received an invitation to England and a promise to be given the throne once the war ends. However, he declined. Instead, he's decided to stay in Holland with his wife. The woman thinks Himmler's plans frightened him, so she assures him that once he's in power again, he can convince the Führer to dismiss the Reichsführer. Wilhelm knows this isn't possible since the regime is full of people who believe in Himmler's logic. Hermina weeps at the thought, so her husband assures her that he's content with the life they have now. Hearing this, she accepts his decision and kisses her husband. Soon, Sigurd and Stefan arrive with a van to drive the Kaiser to the hospital. They put him in the back of the van, but the captain drives away without the wife and colonel. This is so he can meet Mika in the woods and give her a ride. They quickly explain the situation to the Kaiser, so he allows the spy to hide in the van with him. As they approach the gates, however, Dietrich's men are already there. Discreetly, Stefan commands Mika to give him her gun before telling the inspector that he's taking the Kaiser to the hospital. The inspector argues that he must find the spy, so the captain urges them to search without him since his primary duty is to protect Wilhelm. Despite the seemingly critical moment, the inspector decides to check the van to make sure. Hearing this, Mika takes a pill from her pocket to avoid being caught alive. Wilhelm stops her while Stefan shoots the officers with the spy's gun, allowing him to finally drive away. After gaining a safe distance, Mika thanks the Kaiser for saving her life. The man suddenly quiets down, so Mika calls on Stefan to check on him. Luckily, the Kaiser had just fallen asleep. Mika decides that it's her cue to leave, so she invites the captain to join her. However, Stefan refuses to leave his country. She points out that he'll get executed, but he argues that he can lie that he and the Kaiser had left for the hospital and that it was the spy who killed the inspector and his men. This was why he used her gun to shoot the men earlier. However, this also means that they have to separate, so Stefan assures her that she gave him something else to fight for. With this in mind, he again asks the woman to marry him. Mika tells him that she will if he finds her after the war. Afterward, she leaves while the captain discards her gun and takes the Kaiser back to safety. Weeks later, the captain is back to working in Berlin when he receives a package. To his surprise, it's Mika's book with an address on the pages. He then calls the Kaiser's home to inform him that their mutual friend is safe. Meanwhile, in London, a pregnant Mika is called to speak to the Prime Minister. With the war soon coming to an end, Stefan looks forward to reuniting with his beloved, unaware that she'll be greeting him with his child.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.